The rain hammered against the windows of the Thornwood estate as the family gathered in the mahogany-paneled study at 3:30 p.m. Eleanor stood in the corner, her worn gray dress a stark contrast to the silk and velvet draped on the others. She kept her eyes downcast, her plain features partially hidden behind a curtain of dark hair, just as she had for the past 15 years while serving the Thornwood family. "Let's get this over with," snapped Victoria Thornwood, the deceased matriarch's eldest daughter, her diamond necklace catching the dim light. "Mother's been gone 3 days now. Time to see who gets what." Eleanor's fingers trembled as she clutched a handkerchief. She had nursed Mrs. Thornwood through her final illness, sitting by her bedside when the family was too busy with their social engagements. The old woman had whispered strange things in those last days, but Eleanor never imagined she belonged in this room during the reading of the will. Attorney Harrison Blake adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. "If everyone could please take a seat, we'll begin." His gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on Eleanor with an expression she couldn't quite read. Victoria's brother Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, swirling brandy in a crystal glass. "Blake, why is the help still here? Surely she should be downstairs?" "Miss Eleanor Hayes is required to be present," the attorney said firmly, "per Mrs. Thornwood's explicit instructions." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "How peculiar. Mother must have wanted to leave her a small token. A brooch, perhaps, or some household trinkets." The attorney opened the sealed envelope, and the room fell silent except for the crackling fire. He began to read in his measured tone. "I, Margaret Rose Thornwood, being of sound mind and body." The standard legal language rolled on until he reached the bequests. "To my daughter Victoria, I leave my collection of porcelain dolls and the sum of $10,000. Victoria's face flushed crimson. "10,000? There must be some mistake." "To my son Marcus, I leave my late husband's pocket watch and the sum of $10,000. Marcus shot to his feet, his brandy glass crashing to the floor. "This is absurd. The estate is worth millions," the attorney continued, unperturbed. "To my granddaughter Cecilia, I leave my pearl earrings and $5,000. Young Cecilia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "But grandmother promised me the house." "The remainder of my estate," Attorney Blake read, his voice rising slightly, "including the Thornwood Manor, all properties, stocks, bonds, and liquid assets. I leave entirely to Eleanor Margaret Hayes." The room erupted. Victoria lunged toward Eleanor, her hand connecting with Eleanor's cheek in a sharp slap that echoed through the study. "You conniving witch! What did you do to my mother?" Eleanor stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, but before Marcus could reach her, Attorney Blake stepped between them, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "I suggest you all step back immediately or I'll have the police here within minutes." "This is fraud," Marcus roared. "That woman is nobody. A servant. She manipulated a dying old woman." "Eleanor Margaret Hayes," the attorney said, his voice steady and clear, "is Margaret Thornwood's biological daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's hand froze mid-gesture. Marcus went pale. Cecilia collapsed into a chair. Attorney Blake withdrew another envelope from his briefcase. "Margaret Thornwood gave birth to Eleanor 42 years ago, before her marriage to Charles Thornwood. The child was given to a distant cousin to raise, as was common in those circumstances. When that cousin died, Margaret brought her daughter here, not as family, but as staff, to protect her from the judgment of society. She spent 15 years watching Eleanor, testing her character, and found her to be everything she had hoped." Eleanor's knees buckled, and she gripped the back of a chair. "I didn't know," she whispered. "She never told me." "She wanted to," Blake said gently, turning to her. "But she feared the family would treat you even worse if they knew. So she planned this moment instead." He handed Eleanor a sealed letter. "She wrote this for you, to read when the time was right." Victoria's face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You can't prove any of this." "I have birth certificates, DNA test results conducted 6 months ago, and sworn affidavits." The attorney's voice was iron. "Everything is legally binding and ironclad. Margaret Thornwood made certain of it." As the family stood frozen in shock, Eleanor opened the letter with shaking hands. Through her tears, she read her mother's words. Words of love, of regret, of watching her daughter's kindness bloom even in cruel circumstances. The letter ended with a line that made Eleanor's heart swell. "You were always worthy, my darling girl. Now, the world will know it too." Eleanor looked up at the faces that had scorned her for 15 years and felt something shift inside her chest. Not triumph, but a quiet, powerful certainty. She folded the letter carefully and met Attorney Blake's kind eyes. "The family has until the end of the month to vacate the premises," Blake said. "Miss Hayes is the rightful owner of everything." As the rain finally began to soften outside, Eleanor walked to the window, touching the glass with gentle fingers. Her reflection stared back at her, different somehow, though her face remained the same. She was no longer the plain woman in the corner. She was finally completely home.